Good morning, boys and girls. Today I want to talk about texture in The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. But before I do that, last week we talked about depth, which is related to the element of art called space. Depth is the illusion of art where an artist creates a picture where some things look close up and some things look far away and some things are in the middle. So you remember we talked about the Starry Night and how it shows depth. The cypress tree is very close to us as a viewer. It's in what we call the foreground. The village is not really close up, but it's not the farthest thing away in the painting as well. It's what we call the middle ground. Things that are in the background are the farthest away, and that would be things like the Starry Night itself and the mountains in the distance. So that's space and art, the illusion of depth, or sometimes we say 3 dimensions. Now let's talk about texture. What is texture? Well, texture is how things feel. If you take your hand and you take your fingers and you just rub the surface of the table, it probably feels very smooth. And if you take your finger and you just rub it against the surface of the screen protector on the iPad, it probably feels resistant to you, sort of rubbery, because it's made of rubber. That's the word for that texture, by the way, rubbery. If you think about peanut butter, though, a jar of peanut butter, let's imagine that we've got a brand new jar of peanut butter, and we open up the jar, and it's full of peanut butter. If you take your butter knife that you're going to use to make your sandwich, and you stick it down into that peanut butter, is the knife going to fall over one way or another? No, that's right. It's going to stand straight up. And that's because the texture of peanut butter is very thick and sticky. Now I want you to imagine that the paints that Van Gogh used to create the Starry Night are that way as well. They're very thick and they're very sticky, because they were. Let's zoom in on just the moon. And I want you to see if you can see the texture in the paint. Let's look at that moon. I'm going to make it really big. Here we go. Look at that. Look at all of the brush strokes around the moon. I'm going to make it even bigger. Here we go. Can you see the grooves in the paint where Van Gogh left it? Yeah, so can I. That's the texture. If you were to be able to touch the surface of this painting and you were to run your fingers across it, it would feel very rough, because as Van Gogh's painting, he's using a technique called impasto. Impasto is a painting technique where an artist puts the paint on very thick, and it also allows the artist to create unique textures. And this is one of the things that Van Gogh was very well known for. In fact, there's a joke about Van Gogh's paintings. Even though they're over 100 years old, some of them still haven't dried yet. And that's because of how thick he put the oil paints on. Oil paints take a long time to dry. They're not based on water like watercolors are. Watercolor paintings, which we just finished using, don't take very long to dry at all because they're mixed with water. Oil paints are mixed with oil, and oil takes a long time to dry. Okay, so that's texture. We're going to try to create some textures on our iPads, but we're not using oil paint to paint. We're using light. So we've got to figure out how we can create the same kinds of textures that Van Gogh did with light. All right, let's get ready to listen.